Let's talk a little bit about the 6 H's and 5 T's. If you look at your AHA card for asystole, you'll see that shortly after doing the usual things, starting CPR, calling for help, giving drugs, assuring adequate chest compressions, you'll see that they say, start thinking about a cause, the 6 H's and 5 T's. Yes, when someone has asystole, think of the 6 H's and 5 T's. But when someone has ventricular fibrillation, you should think of the 6 H's and 5 T's. There's a cause for this person being in ventricular fibrillation. When someone has symptomatic bradycardia, again, the 6 H's and 5 T's are not at the top of the list, but you should always think of them. You say, well, you know, something happened to this guy that he now has symptomatic bradycardia. 15 minutes ago, he was fine, and now he's on the ground, he's sweaty, he's vomiting, he feels terrible. Something happened to trigger this. So no matter what the cause, no matter what the scenario, always think of a cause. What made this happen? Why is this person sick now who was not sick 15 minutes ago? So let's think about those 6 H's right now. Think about blood. What constitutes blood? What's in blood? Blood has a certain volume. So if the patient loses a lot of volume, they're hypovolemic. Blood has in it oxygen. That's the prime thing that it carries. If there's no oxygen in the blood, then you have a problem. So hypoxia is the second thing. Blood has a certain temperature. You think about that every time you send off a blood gas and you write the temperature on it. So since blood has a certain temperature, if it's too cold, that can be another of the H's. So hypothermia. Let's move on to the fourth one. Blood has a certain amount of acid in it, H+. So acidemia, H+. Blood has a certain amount of glucose in it. So hypoglycemia is another of the H's. And blood has a certain amount of potassium in it. So too much or too little, either of those can be a bad thing. Hyper or hypokalemia. If you think of blood, H, hemorrhage, blood, in those terms, you'll always be able to remember those 6 H's. Now let's think about the 5 T's. I have a little mnemonic for remembering those 5 T's. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pretend like a procoagulant coated lead bullet goes right through the middle of the patient. So you think of a procoagulant coated lead bullet going right through the middle of the patient. If you think of that, you'll be able to think of the 5 T's. Follow along. The first T is trauma. Well, you know, bullet through the chest, that's trauma in anybody's book. The second T is toxins. Well, lead is a toxin. So when that bullet goes in there, think of toxins. Other toxins are things like drug overdoses and things like that. But the idea of toxins, a T. Now, a bullet going through the chest can cause what? It can cause a tension pneumothorax. That's our third T. It can cause cardiac tamponade if it nicks the pericardium. That's our fourth T, tamponade. And our fifth T, remember it's a procoagulant-coated bullet that goes through the patient. A procoagulant bullet in the chest could cause thrombosis. So a pulmonary thrombosis, a pulmonary embolus, or a coronary thrombosis. Almost view it as a coronary embolus. The most common thing from a medical point of view would be a thrombosis. Of course, a coronary thrombosis, you want to think of that first.